Joining us now is the Golden Globe winning actor and Succession star. Needs no introduction, really. Brian Cox. Lovely to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for making the time to be with us.
Good to be here.
Now, I wonder, we all know you've been very busy with Succession recently. I don't know if you're working on anything new, but have you had to exit in a dramatic fashion to join the strikes today?
No, actually, by sheer coincidence, it turns out that the show is finished. So I'm actually going to be doing a whole bunch of theatre. I'm going to be doing a play in Bath in the fall. In the autumn, I'm going to be doing a play about Bach, actually, Johann Sebastian Bach, directed by Trevor Nunn. And then in the new year, I'm going to be in the West End doing Long Day's Journey Tonight. So I'm going to be doing theatre. And this was all planned before any of this strike came into play.
All right, so I'm sure we'll all be booking tickets for that. But do you support the strikers today?
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, it really is about support of the WGA, because they came out. They're the ones who are not being paid properly. I mean, we also have our problems. The SAG, Screen Actors Guild, does have its problems. But it's also mainly in support of the WGA, because without the WGA, without the writers, we have nothing. We depend on the writers. That's why you have shows like White Lotus, like Succession, and they're great shows, greatly written by great writers. And these writers deserve to be paid. They need to be paid, and they need to be paid well. Yeah, now we're coming in. We have our own issues. One is the AI issue, the artificial intelligence issue, and the other issue is the whole issue of residue. There are repeats system that has been failing rapidly, and we need to really reorganize the repeat systems, because so much of our pensions, you have to understand that Screen Actors Guild, because we don't have a national health in America, we depend on we have to pay health insurance, and the health insurance usually comes from the residuals that one receives. That contributes to it. Now, if our residuals go down, that means our health insurance is not going to be met. So, in a sense, we're in a very difficult position. And the AI is another thing that's just another sort of...
Let's take those issues just... I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know we're going to be up against time, but let's take those issues one at a time. So first of all, that issue of pay, it's $26,000 rather, that you'd need in order in the US to reach that threshold for health insurance, to qualify for health insurance in the US. A lot of those people get that, as you say, the actors, through their residual payments. Explain to a British audience, what's a residual payment?
A residual payment is every time something is repeated. Now, with streaming shows, it's endlessly being repeated. We're still streaming, Succession still being streamed, and we need to cover. We need to cover the expense that we are not getting from that, and that's the biggest problem, is that the residuals go down and they're paying less and less now. In a way, the kind of streaming services have shot themselves in the foot, because they said, oh, we're doing very well on this front, And when we called them to task and said, well, look, what about our residuals? What about our money? Of course, now everything kind of closes down and says, well, it's not going to happen. And that helped precipitate the SAG strike. But also the SAG strike, I say, was very much in support of the WGA, unlike the Directors Guild, who did not support the WGA, which I find astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we know it's the first time in 63 years that Hollywood writers and actors are simultaneously striking. So it's obviously supporting each other, as you say, both wanting a bigger share, a bigger piece of the pie when it comes to those profits coming from the streaming giants. You mentioned AI, that was your other point, and the threat that poses to actors. I guess there might be audiences thinking, hang on, how does that work in practice? How could an AI replace an actor?
Well, AI has sort of means to A, impersonate your voice, B, I've just run into a situation just now where I was involved in something, and there was a whole lot of what AI was suggesting I would do, which was an absolute nonsense. It was a kind of jokey thing anyway, but I found it really extraordinary that they'd made up this whole scenario for me, which doesn't even exist. It's got nothing to do with who I am. And this is And so the illusion and the reality, suddenly the illusion takes over from the reality. And that's one of the problems of AI.
Yeah, and we see that, of course, Harrison Ford appearing so much younger than he actually is in Indiana Jones. How concerned are you about the pace at which we're moving forward with AI, I guess sort of divorced from the regulation that maybe needs to surround it?
Well, one of the problems is we really don't know enough about it. We don't know the extent to which it can operate. But it's the boogeyman. You know, it really is the boogeyman there. That the AI, and especially when you're going on a strike, especially when you're striking certain issues. You know, the streaming services could easily go to create AI, artificial intelligent programs, which would be a nonsense and there would never be an original voice. So you wouldn't have an original Jesse Armstrong, you know, or the original guy who's created the White Lotus. You wouldn't have that. It just wouldn't exist, and there would be some kind of copy monkey of the show, and that is unacceptable. Because also the standard immediately drops. It works at a level of a lower standard, which is, you know, I think in our show we've set a very high standard, and it's a standard that other writers are following. And you know, and I'm all for the writers. I think it's really about how the writers were treated, and they were treated very badly. The actors, of course, it's always been dodgy on our terms anyway.
Yeah.
But, we are now coming out firmly in support.
And it's interesting because you are putting the emphasis on the writers there. Of course, many of the actors involved in this strike, actors who are far less famous than you, far less well paid than you, will be so excited and grateful to have celebrities, you know, big stars like yourself joining that strike. The Emmys may have to be cancelled as a result. How long do you think this strike could go on for? How long are you prepared to continue?
Well, I'm in a very fortunate position because I had long planned to do theatre when I finished doing Succession. So I'm already doing a show. I'm doing a play in Bath, and then in the new year I'm doing a play in the West End. So I was already going away from television anyway. But I think, you know, it's a situation which really could get very, very unpleasant, and it could go on for quite some time. I mean, you know, they'll take us to the brink, and we will probably have to go to the brink. So it may not be solved until really, maybe not until towards the end of the year.
All right, well, we look forward to having you back on to talk about it again, Brian Cox, perhaps even from Bath. I'm sure we'll all be buying tickets. Thank you very much, Brian Cox.